Jamaica, and I will be the first reporter to report about the contemporary global governance. Contemporary global governance tackles about the discussion of various political flaws, but the main focus is on the development and functioning of global political structures, starting with more traditional structures such as the nation state. The discussion moves on to the development of regional and global political structures, processes, and of course, contemporary global governance. Political flaws. The global flow of people, especially huge and illegal immigrants, poses a direct threat to the nation state and its ability to control its borders. The looming crisis associated with dwindling oil and water supplies threaten to lead to riots and perhaps insurrections that can lead to the downfall of extant governance. The inability of the nation state to control economic flows dominated by M&S, as well as the current economic and financial crisis that is sweeping the world, is also posing a profound threat to the nation state. Environmental problems of all sorts, especially related to global warming, are very likely to be destabilizing politically. Borderless disease, especially malaria, TB, and AIDS in Africa, pose a danger to political structures. War is on the most obvious global flow, threatening the nation-states involved, especially those on the losing sides. Global inequalities, especially the profound and growing North-South split, threaten to pit poor nations against rich nations. Terrorism is clearly regarded as a threat by those nations against which it is waged. Hence, is the Cold War on terrorism in the U.S. Next is global problems, many of which efforts to increase political transparency, accountability, and political in nature. Finally, political structures initiate a wide range of global flows, sponsored by Robert Mugabe, a government in Zimbabwe that lead to the mass migration of millions of people from the country. Next is the nation state. When we say nation, it is a social group linked to common descent, culture, language, or territorial integrity. When we say national identity, it is a fluid and dynamic form of collective identity. Members of the community believe that they are different from other groups. When we say nationalism, it is a doctrine or political movement that seek to make the nation the basis of political structures, especially a state. When we say a state, it is an organizational structure outside other socio-economic with relatively autonomous office holders. When we say nation-state, integrate groups that define themselves as a nation with organizational structures of the state.
Threats of the nation-state. The nation-state is specially threatened by the global economy and global economic flows. Example, in terms of global economy, nation-states have become little more than big actors. It refers to the borderless global economy that nation-states are unable to control. The decline of the nation-state is linked to technological and financial changes, as well as to the accelerated integration of national economies into one single global market economy. While nation-states once controlled markets, it is now markets that often control the nation-states. So these are the other factors threatening the autonomy of the nation-state. So first, including flows of information. So what is flows of information? Flows of information is exchange information among people, process, and system within an organization. For example, there are two countries like Philippines and China. Ang China ni kuwag mga information which is possible nga maka-affect sa Philippines economy. Second is illegal immigration. Example is sila ang mga tao nga nibalhin og laing country without proper procedure, walay passports, walay paper o walay taxes nga gibayaran o usa na sa mga laws of government. So maka-affect siya sa global economy. Third is new social movement. Example, wala nagtugma ang plano sa government o sa mga gibuhat sa mga tao. Fourth, terrorist. Example is naghatag sila threat of danger sa mga terrorists o lokal na mga tao. Next is criminals. Murag same ra ang terrorists pero murag in small group compared sa mga terrorists. Next is drugs. For example is isa sa mga pinakadako nga laws sa government since the same sa nakita nato sa TV nga confiscate drugs nga nag-value of millions. Then kana sila walay taxes nga gibayaran o makadaot sa community mga tao sa image sa Osaka country o sa specific places. Next is money, including laundered money and other financial instruments. So more on sa government corruption. Lastly is sex, trafficking, and much else. Many of these flows have been made possible by the development and continual refinement of technologies of all sorts. The nation-state has become increasingly porous, while this seems to be supported by a great deal of evidence. The fact is that no nation-state has ever been able to control its borders completely. Thus, it is not the porosity of the nation-state that is new, but rather what is new is a dramatic increase in that porosity and the kindness of flows that are capable of passing through national borders. International human rights. So, international human rights is human rights include the right of life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right of work and education. The autonomy of the nation states is growing interest in international human rights.
Human rights. Human rights defined as the entitlement of individual to life, security, and well-being. Human rights has emerged as a major global political issue. It is argued that because these rights are universal, the nation-state cannot abrogate them. As a result, global human rights groups have claimed the right to be able to have say about what is done to people within, for example, torture of terror suspects and between illegal trafficking in human sovereign state. Those in such a view, human rights are a global matter and not exclusively a concern of the state. Levy and Snyder 2006 to 657. Furthermore, the implication is that the international community can and should intervene when a state violates human rights or when a violation occurs with a state border and this state does not take adequate action to deal with the violation. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, for example, according to Article 13 and number 1, has the right to freedom of movement and residence with the border of its state. Number 2, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. Number 3, it is clear in this declaration and its article is that human rights take precedence over the nation state, and the UN is seeking to exert control over the state at least on this issue.
United Nations UN, in spite of myriad problems, is the premier global organization in the realm of politics.
Roles and function of the United Nations. UN stand in opposition, at least in general, To those who argue that the globalization has brought about or is bringing about the demise of the nation-state, the UN is a global setting in which nation-states meet and deliberate. However, the UN is not merely a setting in which nation-states meet. It is also the independent actor. The two best-known state-based organs in the UN, first is the Security Council, main deliberative body, and second, the General Assembly responsible for the maintenance of the international peace and security.
The UN four broad areas. First is military issues. The UN was envisioned as a major force of managing peace and security, and especially in interstate relations. Second is economic issues. Promote action that would lead to reduction in global inequality. Third is environmental issues. Example is pollution and hazardous waste, which are dealt with primarily through the United Nations Environment Program. And fourth is human protection. A variety of United Nations sponsored human rights treaties and agreements have protected human rights around the world.
The relevance of state amidst globalization. With globalization, the nation-state faces innumerable challenges leading to a significant loss of control over economic flows and transnational organizations. Although the role of the nation-state has declined, it is an important political structure. However, in the global age, the porosity of the nation-state, the increasing global flows through it should be a focal concern. Changing geopolitical scenario. The world can be seen as evolving through three stages: bipolar during the Cold War, unipolar ascendancy of the US, and finally to a tripolar future with the US, EU, and China as the three centers of power. Also examine the emergence of the United Nations as well, more specific organization.
Next is the negative sides to the growth of INGOs. Fundamentally, INGOs are special interest groups, and therefore they may not take into consideration wider sets of concerns and issues. In addition, they are not democratic, often keep their agenda secret, and are not accountable to anyone other than their members. They are elitist, many involve better off and well-educated people from the north. That is, under democratic organizations that seek to impose inappropriate universal plans in local organizations and settings. Thus, they have the potential to be loose cannons on the global stage. They are seen as annoying busybodies that are forever putting their noses in the business of others. They often pander to public opinion and posture for the media both to attract attention to their issues and to expand the power and memberships. As a result, they may distort the magnitude of certain problems, example, overestimating the effects and misjudging the causes of an oil spill, in order to advance their causes and interests. Their focus on one issue may adversely affect the interest in and ability to deal with many other important issues. The nature and the focus, and indeed the very creation of an INGO may be a function of its ability to attract attention and release funds. As a result, other worthy, if not more worthy, issues, example, soil erosion, especially in Africa, may fail to attract much, if any, attention and interest. In some cases, many INGOs conflict with one another, such as those wishing to end certain practices, example lodging, versus those that see those practices as solutions, example lodging producing goods as a sustainable resources that is preferable to fossil, fossil fuels. The North control over INGOs has actually increased, leading to questions about the relevance to the concerns of the South. However, perhaps the strongest criticism of INGOs is that they seem to have helped accelerate further the state's withdrawal from social pretensions. In that sense, they can be seen as neoliberalism's Trojan horses for
New forms of governance. The first is governance without government. Governance without government management. For example, various matters are managed within the nation-state without the involvement of state government. Those localities and regions within the nation-state is managed themselves. The second is governance through various public policy networks. At the global level, this involves government by various international institutions as well as NGOs, international non-governmental organizations, and private sector organizations of various sorts. Finally, governance at the global level can be normatively mediated. Finally, governance at the global level can be normatively and moderated. Included here are efforts driven by volumes, including the Commission on Global Governance, as well as the Global Compact, created by former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. International and non-governmental organization. An international non-governmental organization is an organization which is independent of government involvement and extend the concept of non-governmental organization to an international scale.
Intergovernmental organization are organizations such as the UN that are international in scope. INGOs stand to gain from such formal association in various ways. There are symbolic gains such as greater legitimacy associated with being involved with such an internationally visible organization. There are also the more material gains since such an organization may provide badly needed funding to various INGOs. Work may even be subcontracted to INGO and they can earn income for performing the required tasks.